We want to hit on sleep.
Let's do it. So sleep's important, right? We are going to make specific neuropeptides that help repair brain, cognitive, body, right? Growth hormone, physical structure. So of course, getting to bed matters. Getting to bed before midnight matters. Sleeping 7 to 8 hours matters. That's going to help with repair. Getting to bed before midnight really taps into that growth hormone that peaks between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., which helps repair your body. A lot of neurogenic repair as you start to help your neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, GABA, repair, regenerate, help your body deal with stress, think, help a lot of the inflammation in the brain repair and recover overnight. And so sleep is really important. Again, inflammation affects sleep, blood sugar affects sleep, and adequate levels of magnesium and amino acids that become the building blocks of melatonin play a big role with sleep. So if we're not getting enough good proteins, that's a problem. If we're not digesting those proteins, that's a problem. Infections can affect that. Not enough HCl, not enough enzyme. Just a poor diet can cause that. Too much carbs create blood sugar swings, and that can cause increases in cortisol. And cortisol and melatonin are on an opposite rhythm. So as cortisol goes up, melatonin goes down. So if you're doing things that affect your cortisol, you may have low melatonin. Low melatonin will be harder to get into those deeper phases of sleep where a lot of repair and regeneration happen.
Yeah, my first book was on sleep. It was called REM Rehab. I still sell it, although I don't promote it much. And it was all because I suffered significantly from sleep issues after coming off third shift to pay for college. It was
totally.
Oh man, my sleep was a wreck. I mean, I would work from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. I would sleep all day. My circadian rhythm was wrecked. And in the process, my gut was wrecked too. So I kind of covered the impact of the cortisol and the melatonin rhythm. If that's screwed up, your gut can be screwed up too. There's a circadian rhythm to detoxification. There's a circadian rhythm to gut motility. And all that was messed up when you're working night shift or when you're working swing shift. There's nurses, several studies on night shift nurses having a massive increase in breast cancer. I interviewed a guy, Dr. Richard Hansler. Hopefully he's still alive. He'll literally be pushing 100 by now. When I interviewed him years ago, he was one of my early podcast guests, like 2012. He was like 93. So yeah, he's probably 100. I haven't seen any death reports. Hopefully he's still alive. But man, this guy blew my mind on sleep. He developed brighter and more blue light bulbs for GE for decades. And he has a tremendous amount of guilt because of what he did, which was creating brighter, more blue light bulbs. And so now he's really educating people on sleep, and sleep during pregnancy has actually been shown to reduce the risk of issues in the offspring. So for pregnant women listening, you really got to prioritize this and make sure you're candling down at night. We use salt lamps. We use night lights. We just have a bedtime routine we try to just not do anything too intense mentally. Like I'm not going to open up a spreadsheet at 9 p.m. I'm just not going to. I'm going to try to focus on things. I'm going to do either a guided meditation with headphones, or I'm going to do some jazz music or classical music or something. You've got to have some sort of, I would just say, downshift. And that was actually one of the things in that Blue Zone study is they call it the Power 9. These are these 9 evidence-based denominators that the 100-year-olds believe to slow the aging process. One of those was downshifting. And they always talk about how this culture does this and that culture does that. But anyway, it was either prayer, it was napping, it was meditation, it was some sort of downshift. And I think in American society, that's not really welcomed. It's not welcome to downshift because it's hustle, 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 work, work, work. You're not working hard enough. That's why you're not successful. But I think part of success comes from that downshift and prioritizing sleep. Even Jeff Bezos says, no matter what he does, whether you like the guy or not, whatever he says, 8 hours of sleep is a priority for him. No matter what part of the world he's in, he's prioritizing those 8 hours because it impacts your decision making and all of that. So, I mean, sleep is like that spider web that goes into every aspect of your life, your mood, your emotional regulation, decision making, all of it.
Yeah, and I made a really big priority the last 2 months to really get to bed by 10:30 every night. So I'm getting to bed by 10:30, 11 at the latest, and I'm sleeping minimum 8 hours a night. Makes a big difference, especially getting to bed before 12 really does help. And so, different nutritional strategies that I'll plug in to help. I'll do some GABA, some L-theanine. I'll do some magnesium. And again, high levels of blood sugar, right? One of the biggest impacts when there's studies on taking college kids and making them pre-diabetic by, what they did is they actually restricted their sleep. And the first side effect they saw restricting these college kids' sleep after a couple of weeks was they started turning pre-diabetic. Their blood sugar levels started getting off. So it's kind of like we talk about blood sugar, right? you don't just have to have poor diet to have blood sugar issues. You can have aberrant stress hormones because of poor sleep, right? And so it's like when you have one problem, that one can turn to two, two can turn to three. It's kind of like the old Gremlins movie when you put water on them, they multiply. It's kind of like that. So like a lot of these issues, when you start to have one, you're going to have two. When you start to have two, you're going to have three because things spiral out of control. And then also when you start having blood sugar issues and poor sleep, guess what starts to happen to your cravings? Well, you start craving more refined processed food, and then that starts to create more issues with blood sugar, which then makes more issues with sleep. You see how all these things kind of, they spiral out of control, man. It's like water on the Gremlin. So yeah, you got to keep an eye on that. Really prioritize sleep. Understand how everything connects. If you understand how it connects, I think it gives you a lot more motivation to have those foundationals like really solidified.
Oh yeah. Well, the mood issues too, right? I mean, I talked about like anxiety, depression, a lot of these issues with mental health, a lot of those are related to poor sleep. I mean, I I try to survey as many young teenagers as I can who are clients of mine, and almost every single one of them is sleeping with their iPhone either next to them in their bed or literally under their pillow, not on airplane mode. These kids are sleeping with these iPhones, and they're waking up in the middle of the night, 2, 3 a.m., and they're just scrolling on Instagram, blasting themselves with blue light, which we know is not good. They're getting hit with the radiation every 2 seconds from the cell phone connecting to the cell tower. So, I mean, I think you really, really have to prioritize this, because let's say now you're anxious, you're depressed, and like you mentioned, you're fatigued. So maybe you go for like caffeine with sugar. Now you screw up your blood sugar even more. You're on the cortisol roller coaster. I think sleep is one of those things where you make it or break it. Like this is a really, really one of the most important pillars of life. And I had a client the other day say that you and I need to talk about our kids more. They were like, you and Justin, like you're one of the few guys out there, functional medicine guys, that have kids, because you got all these other people that are like doing podcasts and stuff, but they don't have kids. So they don't have to do what we're doing, like working full time plus managing 2 young children. They were saying it's an incredible feat and we need to like brag about it, I guess, but they also want us to just share more. And I think for you, I'm glad that you're getting to bed earlier, because when you got 2 kids, you kind of have to, because the kids are up so early in the morning that if you're not getting that 10:30 bedtime, you're going to be sabotaged, because 7 a.m. comes around. Those kids are going to be up. Daddy, where's breakfast?
Oh yeah. I mean, we're blessed. I think both of us are blessed in that way that we're able to do well enough where our wives can stay at home full time. And my wife already had a very long career and is essentially retired already. So she's already been there, done that at a C-level, executive level. And it's like, all right, she's ready for the mom life. But man, if there wasn't someone to be there at home full time, it'd be a lot harder, just because there's a lot of stuff always going on. It helps to have someone there. Not everyone's in that position. So if you can set yourself up from a family life to be in that position, that's great. If you can't, we just got to play the best hand that we have. Right. But at least, things that have helped us over the years when we have been more busier is if you can go find pre-made meal service, that's great. Or if you can kind of cook some of your meals more in bulk, or you can get really good at doing an instant pot meal where you have the food just thrown in there and you cooked in 30 minutes while everyone's getting ready or showering or bathing at night. And then you have a nice meal while everyone's getting cleaned up. You have that meal cooking, right? So just try to find strategies that are, I call them net time, right? There's no extra time to do it because you're already doing something else you have to do anyway. So you just got to try to plug those things into your schedule if these habits are really tough to kind of utilize, and just get a habit going on these things. So like we have habitual things dialed in where we're doing magnesium and GABA or theanine before bed if we need it, or we already have the habit of having the low blue light night bulbs in everyone's room that needs a night light. My kids are a little bit younger, so they need that a little bit. If we do too dark, they actually wake up in the middle of the night. So we do the low blue light night bulbs. That's helpful. And then having the good air filtration and keeping everything clean, keeping the temperature really good for optimal deep sleep, right around 69, 70 degrees. So doing all those little strategies can help. And obviously the diet stuff too.
Yeah, detox too. I mean, I've talked about it before, I think on previous podcasts with you or maybe another interview, but binders are really helpful. So my wife takes charcoal before bed and she sleeps better. If she doesn't take it, her sleep is not as restful. So if you do have some sort of a toxin issue, we know that toxins affect hormones and that affects your sleep quality. So mycotoxins are a big one, and insomnia is way up on the list of mold exposure symptoms. So if you find that you're sleeping better in certain environments than other, it could be other factors, but try it. if you're trying some of the sleep support, you're mentioning the GABA, the theanine, magnesium threonate, those kind of things, and you're not getting the relief, you may want to add in something like motherwort, which may calm the nervous system, maybe some passion flower, or you can come in from the detox perspective. Try a little bit of binder before bed, see if that improves your sleep too. And then if you need help, obviously reach out to us, because there's a lot of functional issues we can see on paper that are going to help us to understand what's going on with your sleep. You can try all these, as you would call it, natural palliative care, like these herbs and botanicals. But what's leading you to need that? Like, you shouldn't necessarily need GABA, extra GABA supplementally to sleep. You should be able to do that on your own. So what's impairing that is my question. I'm always asking why? And if you're stubborn and you ask why enough and you use labs, most of the time you can get to the bottom of it.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So if we look at everything, right, we talked about nutrient density. We talked about inflammation. We talked about blood sugar. We talked about sleep. Obviously, there are some palliatives that kind of plug into some of these things, right? And things that help with the inflammation are going to be things like the hyperbaric oxygen therapy, right?